Decision 2008. A close race for the White House is sparking record turnout in many primaries. As voters make their choices, who are the candidates at the center of this historic election campaign? And how did they get here?
I'm running for president, and I'm in it to win it.
She could be the first woman in history to win her party's nomination and the White House. Even though she rose to fame as First Lady, Hillary Rodham Clinton has never been a traditional political wife.
I suppose I could have stayed home and baked cookies and had teas, but what I decided to do was to fulfill my profession.
He's going to always be a divisive force.
She's faced moments of public pain and private crisis, and seems to get stronger.
How Hillary can hang in there is one of the mysteries of Hillary.
She went from the White House to Capitol Hill, an elected official in her own right. And now she's running hard for her husband's old job. In this hour, the personal and political journey that has made Senator Hillary Rodham Clinton a presidential contender.
I think it's time we again had a president who put the American people first, and that is what I will try to do. If you want a winner who knows how to take them on, I'm your girl.
Hillary Rodham Clinton, one of the most famous women in the world.
Mrs. Hillary Rodham Clinton, First Lady of the United States.
As wife of the president, she broke the traditional mold of First Lady, the first working mother in the White House, the first to lead a major cabinet-level policy committee, and the first to become a United States Senator. She may have surprised the country, but not her friends. Since early childhood, Hillary Rodham has been singled out as the girl most likely to succeed. Her story begins in Chicago in 1947. She's the first child and only daughter born to Hugh and Dorothy Rodham.
Hugh Rodham was an extraordinary character. He was very gruff, cigar smoking, sat in the same chair every afternoon and barked out orders to his family, and wanted his children to excel, and brought a lot of that into his daughter as well.
A former coal miner, Rodham is a tough-minded Republican and devout Methodist who runs his own drapery business.
He wouldn't tolerate any excuses for anything or beating around the bush. He was straight and to the point.
As a child of divorce and a former secretary, Dorothy Rodham dreams of a brilliant career for her firstborn.
She was very smart, read a lot, encouraged Hillary to do whatever she could because she saw in Hillary the way to fulfill some things that she couldn't achieve herself.
She took subversive pleasure in teaching Hillary how to fight with the boys.
It happens when the Rodhams moved to the suburb of Park Ridge. Hillary, the new kid on the block, is a target.
There was a very belligerent little girl who used to knock Hillary off her pins every time she'd go out to play. And Hillary would come home and sobbing, and her mother would say finally, "Hillary, there's no room in this house for cowards. The next time you go out, I want you to punch her back." And dutifully, Hillary marched out, and Hillary just decked her.
It was just this incredible uproar on the street, and they started pushing me around, and I pushed back.
And she ran back to the house and said, "I can play with the boys now." And her mother said, "And the boys just let her."
It was a particularly good lesson, I think, for a girl in those days, to be told, you know, you cannot let life do this to you, and you just have to go out there. And so I'm really grateful for that.
From then on, she fits right in. Takes ballet lessons, rides her bike, and plays softball. In Mrs. King's 6th grade English class, Hillary is the classic teacher's pet.
She would ask questions of the class from time to time, and no one would raise their hand. And so Mrs. King would look over and say, "Tell him, Hillary."
In high school, Hillary is driven to excel. When her freshman history teacher assigns a 20-page paper, she goes further.
She wrote a 75-page term paper for me at the age of 14 with 150 note cards and 50 bibliographical cards.
She seemed a little more grown up.
She seemed interested in things outside of high school.
I had made the remark to Hillary's mother that she certainly seemed to know her current affairs and her current political situations in the state. And her mother then volunteered this information that, well, around the table we expect our children to talk politics and know what's going on locally as well as nationally.
Raised a strict Methodist, Hillary as a teenager is inspired by her church's new youth minister, who would become one of the biggest influences of her life.
It wasn't just a lesson on, you know, Sunday morning or Sunday night. We went into Chicago where we worked with and played with young people very different from us racially and ethnically and in terms of their family's income.
She got quite involved, and I think that was maybe a turning point for her. Her involvement with the church and opening her eyes up to those kinds of things.
Reverend Jones also arranges for the group to hear Martin Luther King Jr. speak. In those days, a very liberal voice by Park Ridge standards.
That is a need for all people of goodwill to come with a massive act of conscience.
At the time, it didn't have the impact that it had as she reflected on it later when she went to college and became herself involved in the civil rights movement.
Because at this time in the early 60s, Hillary and her family are staunch Republicans.
This is a Citizens for Goldwater Miller. This was during the '64 year when Hillary was a senior. And here's Hillary's signature in her own handwriting, promising to work for Barry Goldwater.
And when she arrives at Wellesley College the following September, her politics haven't changed.
One of the very first offices she ran for, and Hillary was always running for offices, was for the president of the Young Republicans Club, and she became president.
But her time at Wellesley, the elite women's liberal arts college, will send Hillary's life into a new direction.
That we as a people will get to the promised land.
Martin Luther King Jr. was killed tonight in Memphis, Tennessee.
The 1960s are among the most turbulent times in American history. Over the next 4 years, Hillary is increasingly on the liberal side of campus debates, from the women's movement to school prayer. She's elected student body president, and by the 1968 presidential election, Hillary, once a Goldwater Republican, is campaigning for anti-war candidate Eugene McCarthy.
About the war in Vietnam.
And just a year later, Hillary herself will make her debut in the national spotlight. Also, when we continue, how Hillary meets Bill.
She just put down the book she was reading and walked the entire length of the law library and walked up to me and she said,
"If you're going to keep looking at me and I'm going to keep looking back, we at least ought to know each other, and I'm Hillary Rodham."
"And what's your name?" I couldn't remember my name.
It's May 1969. Graduating senior Hillary Rodham is about to become a legend at Wellesley's commencement. When guest speaker, Republican Senator Edward Brooke, urges the students to support the establishment and back the war in Vietnam, Hillary sets aside her prepared speech to respond.
Even as she began speaking, the ripple, the electricity among classmates, and then the cheers at the end, reverberating. I don't think anybody was not caught up in the moment.
In a polite but firm rebuke of Senator Brooke, Hillary rallies her classmates to challenge the status quo.
I remember the energy of it, just feeling that we had found expression and that it was a jubilant end to our 4 years there, and really the right send-off, the feeling you ought to have had at the end of the graduation speech.
When she finished, they rose in a body and applauded her. And I will never forget it, because Nancy said to me at the end of graduation, "Take a good look at her. She will probably be the President of the United States someday."
I've seen fire and I've seen rain.
By the early 1970s, many baby boomers, molded by the social turbulence of the 60s, start entering the mainstream.
We came of age, the civil rights movement, the Vietnam War, the women's movement, and a lot of us have had to really kind of find our way, make sense of the world that we're in.
And in 1972, she is one of only 30 women in a class of 140 working towards a Yale law degree.
She wanted to change society. She wanted to have the power to actually, you know, as she saw it, improve the lives of children and of different people in society. But she didn't believe in just talking, sitting around writing treatises. She wanted to actually do something.